Hello, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, which is entitled Infor10x SunSystems, an Overview. Now this is actually part of a larger series of webinars that we'll be running over the next few weeks. As I'll explain in a second in the agenda, the objective of this scenario really is to run you through at a high level some of the new functionality in the latest Infor 10 release, which is entitled Infor10x. So my name is Richard Hughes. I'm joined this afternoon by Gary Waylett, and the organizer of this webinar is Emma Mitchell. So, as I said, what we'll be doing just quickly, a quick look at the agenda, some of the topics that we'll be touching on this afternoon. So before we go any further, I think one of the things we really want to try and do is clarify some of the terminology around some of the later Infor releases, because it's quite often been a little bit confusing. So one of the things we'll try and do as we walk through this is just to talk you through what is Infor 10, what is Infor 10x, and what does it all mean for SunSystems. So we'll start off just by sort of recapping some of the core solution characteristics of the Infor 10 release, or indeed Sun 6 as it's sometimes referred to. We'll just run you through exactly what's out there at the moment in terms of functionality, so what has already been delivered in previous versions of Infor 10. What is the Infor 10x release, which is the latest release of Infor 10, and how does that fit into Infor's wider strategy, and more specifically, what does it mean for SunSystems as a product? We'll walk you through some of the new functionality in a little bit of detail, although as I said, there's really a lot of changes, and one of the reasons why we'll be running separate webinars in the next couple of weeks is so we can take a look at some of those areas specifically in a lot more detail. But we'll touch on some of the things at a high level this afternoon. And then finally we'll wrap up before the question and answer session. I'll just look at Infor 10x, how does it fit into the roadmap, for the product roadmap for SunSystems through the remainder of this year and into 2014 and beyond, and maybe what are some of the things we can expect from future releases of SunSystems beyond Infor 10x, and we'll just look again at a couple of examples of functionality we think are particularly interesting. Okay, so before we go any further, one of the things to talk about, so the focus of this session, as I said, is Infor 10x, and Infor 10x is the latest iteration of Infor 10. But Infor 10 itself has actually been out there for close to 2 years, if not a little bit more now. It originally started life as SunSystems 6. It then became Infor 10 SunSystems. It was then renamed to Infor 10. So Infor 10x is really the latest in the Sun 6 product line, which was the replacement, obviously, for Sun 5. So this latest release, as well as a lot of the new things we'll take a look at in this session, obviously aims to build on the core strengths of SunSystems as a financial system product. Some of these are obvious, the traditional strengths of SunSystems have having always been things like multi-currency, multi-language, multi-company, a single unified ledger with multiple sets of books for recording actuals, budgets, all those kinds of things. But at the same time, the original Infor 10 release, the original Sun 6 release, set to build on all of those things by obviously providing enhancements to the core functionality within specific areas within the products, whether it was in financials, whether it was in the fixed assets module, whether it was in corporate allocations, but at the same time really bring the solution up to date in terms of usability, in terms of the user interface, make it compatible with the latest Microsoft platform. So there was a lot of technology enhancements that were introduced in the initial release of SunSystems 6, Infor 10, and in subsequent releases. And Infor 10x really builds on those to sort of take it to the next level. So these are things, you may already be aware of these, but these are things that are out there at the moment and have been in Infor 10 from day one. Fundamentally, one of the things that was perhaps most significant about Infor 10 when it was initially released was the web enablement, the ability to run the entire SunSystems application inside a browser with no major loss of functionality in terms of user interface. So that was in there from day one, and again that's gone through a number of sort of functionality and cosmetic changes, and the latest version, as I say, 10x, really builds on that. One of the other fundamental changes was the reporting engine. So in previous versions of SunSystems, certainly in SunSystems 4, the standard reports in SunSystems, and I'm not talking about things like Q&A Vision here, I'm talking purely about the standard list of reports in SunSystems. Certainly in SunSystems 4, we were obviously relatively limited with what we could do in terms of text output. In Sun 5, we had the actuator report designer, which again was a step forward, but it certainly had a number of limitations. In Sun 6, Infor10, that whole reporting engine was replaced completely with standard Microsoft technology using Microsoft reporting services. So that then introduced the benefit of being able to output things like the standard trial balance straight into Excel, straight into a PDF. You could email the report to somebody else. And other integration, integration with other fundamental parts of the Microsoft platform, things like Microsoft SharePoint, allowing you to collaborate with other people within the organization. And also new options around integration, workflow capabilities with the initial introduction of a technology called Infor Ion. So these are things that have been in Infor 10 from day one. Again, subsequent things that are already out there on the market, in previous releases, mobile options for working, iPad access to the core application and reports, alerts and notifications. These are things that have already been delivered, but perhaps people are not necessarily aware exist. And of course, Infor 10, it's not just a technology release. One of the fundamental objectives in releasing Infor 10 was obviously to build enhance the core functionality of the system itself. So practical things like the ability to apply security restrictions on allocation markers. So if you don't want certain people to use things like correction markers, you can actually set up user group based security on specific allocation markers within the system. Things like ledger evaluation profiles to allow you to better manage the ledger evaluation process, to save all of the parameters you would use in a ledger evaluation run, save that into the profile, and then just simply rerun the re-evaluation next time based on the profile. Integration with things like document management tools, XBRL for reporting to tax authorities, to Companies House, those kinds of things, the ability to do that straight out of the system or straight out of Excel using standard functionality. Enhancements around fourth currency, into better integration with order fulfillment. So these were all things, changes to the core product that were introduced in Infor 10. And we talked about access on mobile devices, so that was brought in the previous release with what was called Infor 10 Motion. So the ability, as you can see there, to run not just SunSystems, but even Q&A Vision, query and analysis on a mobile device. So you can actually run reports, for example, from an iPad. So that's where we were, or where we were until about a couple of months ago. So the most recent release of SunSystems, it's still effectively under the bonnet, SunSystems 6 to all intents and purposes. But in terms of where that fits into a wider strategy with Infor, this new release is is being branded as Infor 10x. But what does Infor 10x really mean? Well, it means a couple of things. First of all, there's Infor 10x SunSystems, but there's also Infor 10x within the the wider context of the Infor product group. So Infor is it's a huge organization. They have a lot of different products within their portfolio, not just SunSystems. Solutions for manufacturing, expense management, corporate performance management, budgeting, forecasting, all of these kinds of things. But in the past, there'd been a very sort of disparate set of products. There was no real unity. There's no way to easily integrate all of these different solutions, and there's no way for any of the no standard way for any of the Infor products to talk to other external applications. There was no common look and feel, and there was no common way of integrating Infor products with anything else. So as a wider part of Infor's product strategy, Infor10x aims to achieve a number of different things. SunSystems is really just a reflection of that within the specific SunSystems product set. So it's really, taking Infor10 SunSystems to the next level and making it part of this wider 10x strategy. So one of the things fundamentally that Infor10x, as part of the product strategy with Infor, is geared towards is actually providing a common look and feel for all of those different applications. They call it, maybe too fancifully beauty as a competence, but what does that actually mean? Well, what it means is ensuring that all of those applications have a common look and feel, but actually that look and feel is something that users will actually want to use. Realizing that perhaps in the past, a lot of the applications maybe had a slightly outdated user interface. Things like web enablement give us the ability to make really attractive user interfaces. So there's actually been a complete new division set up within Infor to ensure that all of their applications conform to this product strategy of having beauty as a competence, making business applications attractive and desirable to use. So that's, they've set up a design agency called Hook and Loop to ensure that that gets executed across all of their products. So that's one thing that Infor10x is about. Another fundamental pillar to the strategy is, of course, web enablement. And web enablement has been around, as we said at the beginning, in Infor10 for the last couple of years. But certainly web enablement is key across all of the Infor products. So not just enabling the core products themselves to be run in the browser, but for all of those products to run within the same web interface. And in the case where we wish to collaborate between different products, or we wish to share information from a core application to other users within the business, making sure that there's, again, a common look and feel and a common framework for being able to do that. So web enablement is also fundamental. And in terms of Infor10 SunSystems, or 10x SunSystems, as we'll see in a second, that's delivered in a number of different ways. One of the other challenges previously we talked about is having a common technology or a common methodology for enabling integration between Infor applications, not just between the different Infor applications themselves, but enabling a common methodology for other applications of any description, other front office, back office applications to integrate directly into SunSystems. And that's delivered through a technology called Infor Ion. So Infor Ion is the other fundamental part of the Infor10x strategy. And again, we'll be running a separate session on Infor Ion to look at that in a lot more detail. But again, on a practical level, day to day, what does that really mean? For SunSystems, what it means is we can now use things like workflow, we can have event monitoring, so we can set triggers on certain events within an underlying application, in this case SunSystems. So when a certain event or criteria, the credit limit on the account is reached, expenditure on a certain project goes over budget, that can be monitored in real time, and then based on that we can generate alerts, emails, other actions in different applications that are controlled through workflow. And again, the platform or the technology behind all of that is Infor Ion. So that's, again, something we'll be looking at in a lot more detail in subsequent sessions. But it's important to understand that Infor Ion, web enablement, and beauty as a competence, or effectively a common, good-looking user interface, are the three fundamental pillars of the Infor10x strategy. And then finally, Ming.le is really the way in which collaboration is delivered. And again, we'll take a look at some of this afternoon to give you some an initial overview of some of the highlights of Infor Ming.le, just to see what that looks like in relation to SunSystems. But again, we're running a separate session in a couple of weeks on Infor Ming.le for SunSystems, just to go into that in a lot more detail. But effectively, Ming.le is the workspace platform to deliver the collaboration between SunSystems and other applications, or SunSystems and other parts of the organization, publishing, dashboards, all of those kinds of things. So it's a single point of entry into all of your Infor applications. Okay, so that's Infor10x as a concept, maybe at a general level, but specifically, how does that relate to Infor SunSystems and Infor SunSystems 10x? What specifically is new in the 10x release? So we saw some of the things that have already been introduced in Infor 10 previous releases, but Infor 10x really is about the convergence of a lot of these new technologies and making sure that SunSystems is enabled to take advantage of all of these things. So all of these things are in Infor 10x, and that's the latest release of SunSystems that's out there right now. So what does Infor 10x mean specifically for SunSystems? As we said a second ago, to summarize Infor 10x in a few sort of key words, it's about mobility, it's about being social, it's collaboration, it's information in context, and it's making sure that all of our applications are connected through a single common user interface, and in the case of integrations and technology and workflow, ensuring again that there's a common technology to connect all of those things together. And Infor 10x for SunSystems delivers that. It makes sure it enables SunSystems to be able to do this. So just if we look at the evolution of SunSystems as a product, some of you may remember some of the older versions on the screen here. Maybe not all the way back to the MS-DOS version, but obviously Sun 426, Sun 5, through into the initial releases of Infor 10 and then mobility. Infor 10x is really about taking that to the next level again. It's making sure we have this clean user interface, but at the same time running in an environment where we can leverage things like context-sensitive business intelligence, collaboration, sharing of information. So this is where Infor 10x fits into the evolution of SunSystems as a product. And as we touched on previously, the technologies to enable that are web enablement, mobility, rich content, Infor Ion for integration, and then Infor Ming.le for collaboration. But at the heart of that, there is, of course, the SunSystems product itself, and the SunSystems product itself continues to evolve and continues to develop. But really, the 10x release is really the major changes and the major enhancements are around some of these things that sit outside and around SunSystems. So as an example, if we take an example of how Infor 10x changes SunSystems. So this is, we'll just walk through a couple of examples using some screenshots here. So what you're seeing on the screen at the moment is the latest version of SunSystems Infor 10x, and what you're actually seeing here is the web client version of SunSystems embedded in the Ming.le interface. So all of this on the left-hand side, you probably recognize this as the ledger entry screen. So this is the standard SunSystems web client, which you may or may not have seen before. But again, for 10x, that's really been given a little bit of an overhaul in terms of cleaning up the user interface, making sure the web client is attractive and easy to use, making sure it's clear. Previous releases of Infor 10, the web client, there's a lot of dark colors, a lot of black. One of the objectives of this release is really just to go for a clean user interface. You'll see a lot of sort of white, light blue, lighter shades of color usage on the screen. So what we're looking at here is the standard SunSystems web client, but actually then embedded with some of that technology such as Ming.le. So as an example, the ability to deliver context, specific information into a process within the core financial application. So what we're looking at here is a ledger entry screen. So we may be entering a ledger entry for a given account, in this case 31010, which is our product cost of sales account, and then based on that account, we may have some other context-sensitive information, and these queries are actually written in query and analysis. So if you're familiar with writing a query in Vision Excel or Vision Executive, then you'll have the ability to write queries that can be deployed as context-sensitive queries into the Ming.le environment. What you can see here is you can have context-sensitive information that updates automatically. So if we then scroll onto a different account in the same ledger entry, the information on the right-hand side will update to maybe reflect a different set of balances or a different drill down for that new account that we've entered on the second line of the journal. So it's about enhancing the the information, getting more out of the core products by making the information more dynamic, and ultimately the information that we have in this environment, we can then start to share that and we can collaborate with it. Another example would be for maybe on a customer, or perhaps on a supplier record, maybe a better example, but in this case it's a customer, and the concept would be exactly the same. So if you go onto an account or a customer account or a supplier account, based on the account that you're looking at on the screen, you can then get a dynamic breakdown of some balances. Maybe if it was a customer, you could get the top 5 or the last 5 orders placed by that customer. If it was a supplier, you could take a look at the top 5 orders or the last 5 orders you've placed with that supplier over the last 12 months. And then as soon as you scroll to a different record in SunSystems, in the customer setup, and supplier setup, and the chart of accounts, whatever that may be, then those widgets on the right-hand side will update themselves dynamically. And you can obviously have things like graphics in there, so you can have charts, bar charts, pie charts, all sorts of graphically rich information displayed. Another example may be, in this case, this is a supplier screen, but we're actually looking at an employee record in this case. So maybe based on the employee that we've selected, you may get a list of the last 3 expense claims that were put through by this employee through the expense management system. And what we can also do is we can also incorporate drill down. So as well as these context-sensitive queries being updated dynamically, we can actually incorporate things like drill through or drill down into those widgets, which based on the drill down that we execute will actually then change the context of the core application itself. So in this case, we have an employee record, and then on the right-hand side we have the last 3 expense claims that were posted to this employee's account. One of those was journal number 2072, so if we double click on that, that will then actually take us straight into a journal inquiry for journal 2702 inside the underlying application. So it'll just go into the standard journal inquiry screen within Sun, bring up the details of that expense claim integration that came through, and again, based on the screen within journal inquiry, we've then got some different context sensitive information that is again updated dynamically on the right hand side. So really, Infor10x, what it means is, or the aim of it is to ensure that you have real-time access to information that's really important, being able to get more done by making the most use of the information that you have on the screen. So it's being able to take information in the core systems, SunSystems in this case, and then be able to do other things with it, make the information become dynamic, being able to access that information anywhere, whether that's on a mobile device. So one of the other fundamental changes or enhancements, I should say, in Infor10x, we saw that mobile access was always available in Infor10, but again, it's been enhanced a little bit in Infor10x. So again, it's been made easier to use. Things like the standard reports available on mobile devices, you can now simply scroll through all of the standard reports in SunSystems just using a carousel interface on your iPad, so that any report you have is published to the report manager in Infor10 with a trial balance and account listing, or any other custom report that you've developed within the SSRS report designer and published to the report manager. That is then immediately available for somebody who has access on a mobile device. We can also, if the requirement is there, we can also enable data capture of information from mobile devices directly back into SunSystems. We can update information back into records within SunSystems from a mobile device. And again, this is something that is new, specifically in Infor10x. This was not available previously. And then finally, if we just, again, we'll look at this in a lot more detail in a couple of weeks in the Ming.le session. But Ming.le really, again, I'm not quite sure where the name originated, but Infor Ming.le is effectively what used to be SunSystems Workspace. So it's really a single point of entry, a single portal for all of the activity that goes on with any Infor-related application. And in the case of SunSystems, it's where we can start to collaborate, where we can take information from the underlying finance system and then share that with other users within the business. You can take the results of a journal inquiry, take the results of an account inquiry, you can take the results of a payment run or something that happens inside an account allocation, and you can then actually share that in the same way as you would maybe share a story on Twitter or share a post on Facebook. You can actually share that to the Infor Ming.le portal, and you can add attachments to that, you can add notes to that, but then that information is no longer hidden in the underlying application. It's actually visible to other people within the organization. Of course, there's security around that. We're not saying we're suddenly making, it's not a Pandora's box where we're suddenly making the entire contents of the accounting system visible to everybody within the company. There's very strict rules about what we can do and the way information is published. You can obviously choose to publish to secure groups. You're not opening up the system for consumption by all and sundry. But it's the ability to publish information. The concept is the ability to publish information that previously would perhaps have been hidden in manufacturing system, in the asset management system, the expense management system, publish that to a common portal, but then have the user have the ability to maybe drill back into the core system without actually needing direct access to the core system itself. So if you publish the results of, you've received some money from a customer, or you've maybe made payment to a supplier, somebody else in the sales team needs to know when that supplier has been paid, you can publish the result of that journal or that payment run to the portal. You can put on a payment reference number, and if they click on the payment reference number, that will drill back to the original account. But at the same time, they can be alerted once that information has been published to the portal, so they can then go off and do something else or action something else that was waiting for that task to be completed in the accounting system. So to summarize, I think the ideas behind Infor10x means, for SunSystems, what this means is there can be the finance applications can now have influence beyond the immediate finance department. We have the ability for people in finance to collaborate across the organization. By using context-sensitive information, we can provide real-time visibility, we can gain better insight into other things that are happening, and hopefully we can improve the performance, we can make people, users of SunSystems, more effective by giving them better information and being able to share that information with other people. So that's really what Infor10x for SunSystems is about. So Infor10x, it's out there right now. It's the latest release of SunSystems, and as I mentioned probably a couple of times already, we will be running some very more detailed sessions in the next couple of weeks to look at both the detailed functionality within Infor10x, SunSystems, the core product, but also around some of these other overlapping technologies such as Ming.le, Infor the workflow and collaboration. So Emma will be sending out some invites to separate sessions where we'll be going through some practical examples of those in more detail. So this session was really just to give you, an overview and a heads up on some of the things that have been introduced in the latest version of SunSystems. And maybe actually just to sort of finish up before we go into the Q&A session, just a very small glimpse of potentially, how this fits into the larger roadmap for SunSystems, and what are some of the things we can expect to see, beyond the end of this year and into next year. So the next major release of SunSystems, or Infor10x, under the bonnet, is going to be what is currently just codenamed SunSystems 6.2. This will be on general release in January of next year. So you'll see here, a couple of highlights, some of the key functionality that is going to be introduced in that release. Just maybe, again, there's a lot of things in here, but just for the purposes of this session, because I know we're constrained by time, there are a couple of things which I think is maybe useful just to discuss in a little bit of more detail. I think things that we at Eclipse are certainly excited about, and there are two things. One is the extended analysis module, which I'll explain in a second, and the other is something called enterprise data management. Enterprise data management, maybe I'll start with that. That is really the ability, and just before I go any further, both of these things are additional modules. So these will be, from a licensing perspective, these will be licensed as separate modules within SunSystems. But enterprise data management, addresses a requirement that we're certainly seeing more and more often with our customers at Eclipse, and that's the ability to manage the core information within SunSystems centrally. So quite often, maybe in a multi-location and multinational implementation of SunSystems, we have a number of different business units or a number of different geographically dispersed operations. But really, the master data for all of those operations, all of those legal entities, is fundamentally the same. There's a core chart of accounts, there are a core set of analysis dimensions that need to be managed. And we quite often in new implementations get requests of how can we set up a method for creating maybe master business units, which we can then replicate the chart of accounts out to the different subsidiaries. So when a new account is created in HQ, how can we then push that out? Or when a new project code is created in HQ, how can we then push that out to the different operations in the other countries? There are certainly ways to do it at the moment, but it can, it's a little bit complicated, and we have to use things like transfer desk and automation desk to really sort of create a lot of transfer desk profiles, transformations, monitor and push all of that information out. Enterprise data management, offers a way to manage that centrally from a single web-based portal. So again, underneath, it's using the Infor technology, but it's really aimed to really simplify the process. If you have a requirement to manage master data across a number of different business units, whether it's things like chart of accounts or even project codes or employee information, user information that needs to be copied across multiple installations or multiple business units, then enterprise data management is a single user interface for being able to control and manage all of that. The second thing, which I think is quite exciting, that will be released in SunSystems 6.2 is the extended analysis module. Now, the extended analysis module is really, perhaps the best way to explain it is it's analysis on analysis. So I'm sure you're familiar with the current concept of analysis dimensions within SunSystems, and traditionally that's perhaps always been one of SunSystems' strengths versus other applications, the ability to analyze the ledger and the accounts in a number of different ways. What the extended analysis module will allow us to do is effectively build out additional custom categories on top of analysis codes that already exist. So as an example, we may have an analysis dimension for project. Within that, we may have multiple project codes. But what we can further define with extended analysis is on each project code, we can set up some additional fields. So we may wish to set up project manager, project status, various other different things, and we can then start to build up a mini database almost of additional information specific to a single analysis code. As an example, this is obviously not the final screen design. This is just a mock-up of what it probably will end up looking like. But obviously a lot cleaner than this. Is you would define, for example, within that project code dimension, you can set up a number of different additional fields to analyze the project codes by. So we can say, we want to capture project status, we wish to capture the project category, the project manager. We can define whether that's a drop-down, whether it's a free text field, is it a date field, is it numeric, is it mandatory, all of those different kinds of things. And then once you've done that, what you would then see, so at the moment this is kind of a replica of what you see on the standard analysis code field, the ANC within SunSystems. If you go into an analysis code at present, you just have the one area. But in extended analysis, and again this is obviously just a simplified mock-up of the screen, what you will have in extended analysis, on each analysis code you will have an additional set of tabs where you can then capture all of those additional custom fields. So you can see here, you can capture project status, is it in progress, is it complete, what phase of the project are we on, what category of project, who's the project manager, who's the account manager, site code, all of those different kinds of things. So you can build up a database of information about that project, and of course once you've done that, all of this additional information is available within the standard reporting tools. So if you wanted to run a report in Vision Excel to show you the financial impact of all of the projects managed by John Wilson, then you can very easily do that. So all of this additional information is of course available in Vision to report on. So that's something we think is going to be really useful. I think we're quite excited about that. And then finally, just to sort of wrap up, where does that fit into the wider roadmap? And again, some of these dates may change. Version 6.2, we said the general availability of that release is going to be around January of next year. That will then be supplemented in the future with some minor releases, 6.21, 6.22, things that may sort of on the roadmap for introduction in those versions. Again, it's a little bit of a way off, but maybe things like for new implementations at least, things like template deployments, quick start implementation for industry-specific implementations, maybe hospitality. And again, these are still to be finalized at this point. But you can see there some of the things that are on the roadmap, and also towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, the cloud-based solutions for SunSystems. Again, in terms of licensing and pricing, we don't have the final pricing and licensing available from Infor yet, but the idea is that effectively Cloud SunSystems is the solution that can be delivered either purely software as a service, and the platform for that is something that can be delivered running on Amazon Web Services. So again, that's quite exciting. That's scheduled, I think, realistically, it's probably going to be the beginning of next year at this point. And as soon as the pricing and licensing implications of that are available to us, then we'll certainly make it known to our customers. But again, just to give you an idea of how Infor10x and version 6.2 fit into the wider roadmap. Okay, so as I said, that was really just a sort of flying tour through some of the highlights, some of the things that are new in Infor10x, which is the latest release of SunSystems. We will be running separate sessions, as I said, on both Infor Mingle, Infor Ion, and taking a look at some of the core functionality within the standard SunSystems desktop and web client itself for Infor10x. But what I'd like to do now is I'll just hand back over to Emma, who's the organizer of this session, and if anybody has any questions or answers, if you could make yourselves known to Emma, then we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Please can anyone let me know if you have any questions, either by raising your hand or by typing a question in on your keypad. Thank you. No questions so far, Richard.
What I've also done, I'll just put our contact details up on the screen here, so of course if you have anything you'd like to ask us, anything you'd like to take a look at in more detail, then definitely please get in touch with either myself, Richard, Gary, or Emma on the number you can see there, or you can definitely email us on any of those email addresses. And Emma will be following up with you after the session, and she'll also provide you with all of our contact details in case you want to ask us anything.
Hi, Richard. I think Aidan may have a question. I'm just going to unmute him.
Yeah.
Feel free to speak, Aidan. Maybe that was by accident, Richard.
Okay.
Richard, I have a question from Alan.
Yes.
He would like to know, is Infor 10x available now? He's just querying why in the roadmap it says 6.2. Could you just clarify that, please?
Yeah, so Infor 10x, the web client that we saw there, that is available now. 6.2 is the next release beyond Infor 10x, which really builds on Infor 10x. So it's Infor 10x, the next stage of Infor 10x, I guess, and maybe that's why they call it Infor 10x. So all of the screenshots that we looked at during the session, that's what's out there right now. The final roadmap that we looked at, that's really the future roadmap. What is what's not yet available, and what is 6.2 is the next major release, which is not released yet. That is in January, but that builds on Infor 10x, and that will have things like the extended analysis module, Arabic languages, Unicode databases, and all of those kinds of things in there. But that's the future. So everything you saw before the roadmap, all of those screenshots, that's what's available now.
Thanks, Richard. Alan would also like to know how long it would take to upgrade.
Was that from a specific version so the question was, how long does it take to upgrade? Obviously, depending, a bit of an open-ended question, depending on what version we're going from to. Do you have any more information on that, Emma or Alan?
From 5.3, Richard. 5.3, Richard. Yeah.
Yeah, again, obviously, it's a very open-ended question, and every upgrade will take a slightly different amount of time depending on what you already have in place, how many business units, how big your data is, how many physical locations you have, how many customized reports you're using, customizations. So it's a little bit of a difficult one to answer without knowing some of the specific requirements, but maybe if you want to get in touch with us after the session, we can go through that in a little bit more detail and give you a more accurate number. In terms of the actual process for upgrading, the process, the question was what's involved from upgrading from 5.3. Was it 5.3, Emma? 5.3 to Infor 10.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
It is the standard. Yeah, so there is a, the question was, how long does it take to go from 5.3 to Infor10x? Well, the how long part is obviously a little bit more difficult to answer, but the how part is relatively straightforward in that it's it's a standard upgrade path. There's no re-implementation or data migration involved for the core product. So if you're upgrading your data from 5.3 to 10, that's a standard upgrade path. Obviously we go through a standard project methodology for doing that. And then on top of that, if you want to implement things like Ming.le or some of the SharePoint integration, the Ion functionality, that would be implemented on top of that, mobility. But what a core upgrade from 5.3 to 10x would give you, it would give you, the 10x look and feel. It would give you the 10x web client out of the box, and then obviously the benefits of the enhancements to the core product itself were those things we looked at in the beginning around asset classes, journal classes, ledger evaluation profiles. Depending on what parts of the system you're using, there's obviously functionality upgrades in there as well. The SSRS reporting, all of those kinds of things. So to answer the question briefly, it's probably a little bit difficult to, without understanding the requirements in more detail, to tell you exactly how long it would take to go from 5.3 to 10x. But the good news is it is a standard upgrade path. But definitely, if you want to have a more detailed discussion around that, then please get in touch with Emma or myself after the session, and we can look at the specifics.
Thanks, Richard. Alan would also like to know, is it better to wait until for the 6.2 general release in January, or start an upgrade this year?
Well, I think it really depends on the functionality that if you think you're specifically going to benefit from something that's in version 6.2, then something like extended analysis or enterprise data management, or you really need that Hindi translation, then definitely probably if you're looking at upgrading at this point, then it's probably better to wait for 6.2 from a functionality perspective. So I think it really comes down to is there something specific in the 6.2 functionality that is you really need, and if that's the case, then it may make more sense to wait for 6.2 as opposed to upgrading to 6.11 or 6.13. I can't remember, 6.1 whatever the latest version is, Infor10x. But if you just want to have, if you want things like this, things that we looked at like this, then that's not necessarily dependent on waiting for version 6.2. So, I would say, it really depends on if there's something very specific in 6.2 that is going to make a big difference to the way you work, then it probably would make more sense to wait for 6.2. That's the honest answer, I think.
There are no further questions, Richard, by the way.
Yeah, okay, thanks. But again, what I would say is these are just some really high bullet points about what's going to be in 6.2. Again, it's probably worth having a discussion to go through the detail of that. So what I'll do, if there are no more questions, what we'll do, I'll just leave the contact details up on the screen for a few minutes. I think we're okay to send the slides out on this one, are we, Emma?
Yes, we are, Richard. Yeah.
I should have asked you before, but I forgot. What we'll do is, for everybody who attended this afternoon, we'll send you a PDF of the slides, and then you'll definitely have our contact details in there as well. So, with that, thank you very much for attending. Really appreciate you taking the time out this afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.